Good afternoon, everybody. This is Greg Taylor from DecisionFirst Technologies. I am an account rep. I cover local and state, among some other things here for DFT. And welcome to our location intelligence seminar around, or webinar, around how I can help with your government agencies and stuff. Just a little quick note on DFT, or DecisionFirst Technologies. DFT is a gold reseller of SAP Business Objects software. We're also an Esri partner and a APOS partner, and basically a partner with every technology that you'll see here today. We have been Partner of the Year for SAP Business Objects for the last 6 years running. Been a partner since 2001, and based here in Atlanta. We cover North America with a very heavy concentration kind of east of the Mississippi, and we're a company of about 50 consultants here, and again, based throughout the Southeast. From here, I'm going to let Amanda Werling, who's Director of Marketing, and then Chris Hickman take it over. They'll take you through this webinar, and then answer any questions at the end of it, and we'll get started here.
Thanks, Greg. Yes, this is Amanda Werling, Director of Marketing here, and I'm the one that kind of puts together all the programs. Hopefully that you'll come back and see us on future webinars. But I'm going to introduce you to Chris Hickman in just a second, but I did want to let you know that all the phones have been muted currently, but we will unmute the line at the end of the webinar so that we can have a Q&A. However, please feel free to send us a chat if you have questions along the way, and we will try to incorporate those questions throughout the presentation. But again, if we don't get to them, we will definitely answer them at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris so we can get started on location intelligence.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Hickman. I'm one of the senior business intelligence consultants here at DecisionFirst in Atlanta. I've been with the company for about 4 years. My main concentration is on the reporting IDD side of the Business Objects platform. So I'm well-versed in universe design, Webby reports, Crystal reports, business objects administration, and training and mentoring on that side. I'm also the in-house expert on the location intelligence side of our business. We deal primarily with Esri, the 40-year-old company out of Redlands, California. We also deal with the integration between business objects and the Esri GIS system. And we partner with a company out of Canada called APOS. So let me flip over here and show you this quick agenda. I'm going to continue on with the introduction here, and then we'll go into the relationships among DecisionFirst and all of our partners that are involved in the Location Intelligence initiative. We'll also talk about location intelligence, what it is, and how to define it, how to think about it, and how it integrates in with the different systems. And then we'll go into a live demonstration of some of the use cases that I've seen in the past, some of the technologies that we have here in-house, and then I'll leave you with a review of what we talked about, and then how to think about location intelligence and put it into terms of your own data, your own reports, your own mapping, your own business. So, as I said, I'm Chris Hickman, Senior BI Consultant, and the partnership between Business Objects and Esri is pretty natural. They each deal with data. Obviously, you have reporting on the business object side, but you have mapping on the Esri side. Now, the two can come together. You can select objects in your map, so you can select points, polygons, lines, any features that you have in a map, and then run a business objects report, whether it's an existing report or a new report in Webby and Crystal. You can also, over on the business object side, select records in a report and then show those records on a map. So, and to do that, there's the company APOS out of they're a Canadian company, has created an integration kit bridge that bridges the space between the two systems. So we'll move on here. Location intelligence, what is it? Location intelligence is basically business intelligence with a geographic component. So I like to say it puts the where in your data. So consider you've got a listing of addresses for general public, and you normally can run reports on those. You can filter them out by county, by zip code, by city, by state, whatever makes sense to your data, to your application. Now imagine being able to put those points, using the addresses that you have for those individual data points, putting those on a map, and being able to geographically analyze that data. So that then adds a component of where to your analysis, because you could then look at the entire region of your data, whether it's a single county, a single state, multiple states, the entire country, and see where you have concentrations of data, where normally you can't see that in a report. You just have a listing in a report. So what can location intelligence do? Well, it can provide for more growth. If you know where your audience is, or where your facilities are, or where your assets are located, that can give you more of an idea of where you can grow, so where you can look for more people, look for more assets, place more locations, basically serve the public a lot better. Enhance profitability in core business areas. If you work for a for-profit business, you do have the ability of analyzing that data so that you can grow your profitability. Delivering key products and providing a competitive advantage. Competitive advantage not so much in the government industry, but we are trying to serve the public as best we can. So, put in a couple of graphics here to kind of take real-world examples of the way that we look at data and map it over to government and basically business data. So what you're looking at here is two screenshots of weather data. We've all seen weather data, like the screenshot on the left here that shows weather data in Southern California, so basically the severity of a storm that's hitting the area. And you know by the little chart on the left, but you also know by looking at these for so long that the different colors mean different intensities. Normally the blue colors, the cooler colors, are less intense storms, and the more orange, yellow, orange, and red colors are the more intense storms. So you can map that over to a GIS system and think about it thematically. So thematic highlighting is a phrase that I like to use, and it allows you to take areas that make sense to you and to your business and highlight those according to different scales. So, and the right side there obviously is our temperature gradient, and that's another example of how you can thematically highlight data. This is just showing temperature ranges from colder areas up in Canada down to the warmer areas in Baja California, Mexico, and Florida, along with us over here on the East Coast. So then whenever we take that idea of thematic highlighting and we put it into a business example, we can show here like a regional metropolitan area, and we can show the amount of gasoline spending in those areas. Now, the amounts there that you see in the legend on the right go from $410,000 to $75 million as the colors go from red to green. And then you can also see on the map that the customers are populated with little black dots. So you can see that the higher amounts of gasoline spending are in the areas naturally where there are more people. So then that begs the idea that you could go into those areas and you can go into the more underserved areas and give more attention or try to analyze what you need to add in those areas to better serve those areas. So moving on, you can think of GIS in the idea of layers. So at the very top of this chart, we have one layer that's showing customers or the total population. And then we have the next line down, or the next layer down, shows your streets. So you've got a layer that shows all the streets in your area. And then you can move on to land parcels, and then you can apply elevation thematics to it, land usage thematics. And then the combination of all of those different layers combines together into what becomes view of the real world. So at the very bottom there, we've got all of that combined into a three-dimensional view of a city that shows land usage elevation, parcel, streets, and the population at large all in one view. So it creates a real-world example there. So the next few slides is where I start breaking out how we use location intelligence in different verticals. So in this case, we have transportation. I worked on a DOT job middle of last year where we had a study of insufficient bridges. So bridges within each county, we needed to go into each county, and instead of just basically running a report that in the prompt you would select a county name, they wanted to be able to select a county, an actual physical county on a map, and say, in this county, where are my deficient bridges? So what you're seeing on the image in the foreground there is a county in the state that we worked on, and shows you in pink points where the bridges are. And then over on the left side where you see the links, you can click each one of those links, and then that'll launch a report. And that report is just a Webby report that lives in business objects. And so in that report, the report was generated like you would create any other report, but then the report was sectioned out by bridge conditions. So we could see in that county which bridges were sufficient, which were insufficient, which were in dire need of repair. So you can use location intelligence to deal with bridge assessment like we did in that job. Also route management, because another aspect of this job was working with different routes and determining based on a specific route between two mileposts what the condition of that segment is. So we could go out into a map, into a specific area on the map, draw a circle around the roads that we wanted to analyze, and then run a report and determine based on the latest inspection data how those roads are looking, if they need to be repaired or if they're fine for now. You can also think about this in terms of facilities management for Department of Transportation. So one of the maps that I have lists all of the transportation locations or the transportation offices in the state of New Jersey. So you can zoom in on each one and determine based on your geographic data what applies to each location, whether it's how many trucks are there, how many trucks are based there, how many loads of sand and salt they have for the snowstorms, and whatever pertains to those locations you can show on that map. Fleet administration and emergency response are also important. Obviously, with the snowstorms we just had in the Atlanta area and up in the Northeast, emergency response was critical because it helps get us back to work and back on the roads. Higher education, whenever you're talking about the Department of Education and we're trying to reach more and more students, you can use location intelligence to determine where current students are. So you could gather anonymous data for students, determine where those students are coming from, and determine where there are locations where you could potentially market for to draw in other students where there may be some interest there. You can also think about it in terms of donations. So if you're trying to gather donations for your various institutes of higher education, you can use that to determine which type of donors you currently have and where there might be other donors like that. Curriculum planning is interesting because you can do local industry analysis based on a wide range of available data with Esri that allows you to look at those industries in the area and then analyze those industries to plan out more accurate curriculum that pertains to the different course offerings. With healthcare, especially with public health, whenever we have regional outbreaks, we start gathering data, and this data can be highlighted on the map. The most important example that I have on this page is the bubble map over on the right side with the H's on it. It shows different hospitals. It shows an outbreak of a virus and its relation to different hospitals. So you can see that where there are areas with more hospitals, there's less of a breakout of this virus. But then where there are areas that are not served, they may have, and in this map they do have, more instances of an outbreak. So public health officials may want to investigate those areas to determine why there's a higher outbreak there and why there are no clinics or hospitals that are out serving those areas. So it makes more sense to get out into those areas and try to make that determination. Location intelligence also helps you with site selection. So where do you want to put those new clinics? Would it make sense to put a high-end hospital in an indigent area? You can do a lot of analysis based on this demographic data to determine what people or who the people are that live in the area, who would most use the hospital, and what type of care that you can tailor to best serve that public. Emergency response. This is what I think is one of the most interesting. Processing claims. So if you've got an oncoming emergency like a hurricane that's about to strike the Gulf Coast, you want to know what the location is of that hurricane at any point in time. Well, that data is publicly available from the NOAA website and can be brought into the Esri system at any point in time. And then Esri can dissect those points or those polygons that come from NOAA, so say the 74-mile-an-hour wind swath and above, which I'll talk about just a little later. You can determine the population within that single wind swath, or any wind swath for that matter, or the 3-day path. How large of an area is it going to affect? What's the flooding risk? Where should we put more resources to respond to higher flood risks? All that can be determined through the analysis of Esri and then the integration of the data with business objects. And I'll give you a demonstration on that a little later. So we also have utilities, and one of the demonstrations I have is fire hydrants in the Winston-Salem, North Carolina area. We can better allow for asset management, routing of fleet vehicles, market development, targeting marketing, call center management. I like to think of the term assets in terms of the fire hydrants. If you've got a customer that calls in, say a water customer that calls in and says that their water tastes bad or their water is not working, you can plot their location or their address on the map and then go out on your map and then draw a 2-mile circle around that area, find out anything about the pipelines in that area or what fire hydrants are in that area, and find out if there's been any reported issues with any of those fire hydrants or those pipelines. And then based on that selection, that's the report you can run in business objects. So you can pass all those fire hydrant IDs in behind the scenes and then run a report based on that selection. So now we've moved into the demonstration portion. If there are any questions about anything that I've just gone over, please feel free to send Amanda a message on chat. You can either direct it to all participants, directly to the host, which is Amanda, or to Amanda and myself, which are host and participants. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to talk about 3 use cases. The first use case we're going to talk about is customer complaints to a water department. And then we're going to talk about properties at a hurricane risk, and then we're going to talk about fleet tracking. So I'm going to close this spreadsheet or this PowerPoint presentation and minimize that. I'm going to go into my web browser. And then I'm going to bring up our splash page. And the splash page is just a place that lets me click on links to jump directly to our individual examples, whether it's in the GIS system or in business objects. So let me talk a little bit about the architecture of the solution. So we've got, on one side, we've got business objects. On the other side, we've got Esri. Business objects is a business intelligence application. Esri is the GIS system. Now, the APOS, you can imagine, stands in between the two. So right in between the two is the APOS bridge, if you will. So we've got a bridge that provides two-way communication between business objects and Esri. So what I'm going to show you first is an Esri to business object map. So we're going to be able to select points on the map, pass those selections over to business objects, and see a report. And then I'm going to show you the other way. So we're going to run a business objects report, and I'll show you how you can go back to the other side, back into the map, and show those points on a map.
Chris, before we move on, we have one question that, what are the steps involved in setting up APOS with business objects in Esri? Okay,
good question. So we've got different ways of doing that. We can either come into a business or an organization that has neither business objects nor Esri installed, and you would stand up an instance of business objects and stand up an instance of Esri. And then to set up APOS, it's just another installation that you install a profile administrator on the business object server, and then you install the mapping components on the Esri server, and they, in that bridge, work together to form that bridge between the two systems. So it's just, APOS is just a third installation, and then there's some configuration you go through to identify your layers and the field in the Esri system that you want to map to what object in your universe and business objects. So, okay? So if that answers that question, if you have any more questions about that, please feel free to chat us. Okay, let's go into the Esri to business object map. So this is going to launch a map, and for the developers like me, this map was developed in the programming language Flex. And I'm waiting for a group of blue dots to show up on this map. There they are. So these blue dots represent different agencies or different offices or police stations or fire stations, public works offices all across the country. This is a subset of those. So what I want to do here is I'm going to zoom into the Winston-Salem area. And so you see a nice blob of green dots pop up. Those are fire hydrants in the Winston-Salem area. And I'm going to keep zooming in here. And, okay, so we've got a listing of fire hydrants here. So now we can pan around this map, look for different fire hydrants, zoom in as far as we want to get in on an individual subdivision if we want to. And then we can also zoom out, pan around, do what you normally do with a map. So this menu icon, this mapping application was built by APOS, and inside of here we have a layer selector. The layer selector shows you the world map base map, and then I've created a layer called DOT, and I'm just going to hide all of these layers that are currently turned on. And then, so I'm going to turn back on the Winston-Salem fire hydrants, and I'm going to also turn on the customers list, so we can see what customers we have that may have called in. I'll turn off that again. Let me zoom out a little bit, because I just have very few calls here in the Winston-Salem area. So here's one. So we've got a customer here that's called in and says there's something wrong with their water. Now what we can do is zoom in on that area, and now we've got the selection tool. The selection tool allows you to use different shapes on top here to draw shapes on your map. And then you're able to use a layer to query on here. So we've got offices, Winston-Salem hydrants, and customers that we can use to do a query. So what we're going to do, we're interested in drawing a 1/10 of a mile buffer around this customer's house to determine where their fire hydrants are. I'm going to pan over a little bit. And so I've got this buffer tool. When I click on that buffer tool, it says the buffer distance. I'm going to give it 0.1, so 1/10 of a mile. And then the layer that I'm going to pick is Winston-Salem fire hydrants. And then I'm going to click my point. So now we have a selection here that shows me 1/10 of a mile circle around that customer call. Now I'm going to wake up my fire hydrant layer. So you can see that we have 2 fire hydrants within that circle. Now I can go into this circle and select it, and let's just change this name to something like customer call 0224-2011. Okay? So we've got a few options down here at the bottom. We can delete the selection if we want to do some maintenance. We can view any records that are behind that selection. So if I do that, see we have a listing of fire hydrants underneath here. And then you can look at the data. So there's one at 207 Kyle and 231 Kyle. And then we've got other options here to clear all selections, group the selections together, which is another maintenance feature. You can zoom in on the individual selections, or this is the most important, you can click this button to run the report. So when I click that button, it's going to process those points on the back end, it's going to pass the unique identifiers for those two hydrants over into our business object system. And then, so now you'll notice that this is just a standard Webby report. Now these are the two fire hydrants that I just selected, and it's a very simple report here that shows you 207 Kyle and 231 Kyle. So all it did was pass over these two IDs to give us the report on the fire hydrants that we selected. Now we can then use our standard Webby expertise to build out this report however it makes sense. So if we wanted to see these two fire hydrants and their performance based on every fire hydrant in the Winston-Salem area, we can develop that report to do that and set up a prompt in that report to pass those two IDs in. Makes it kind of neat how it passes that in with such little change on the reporting side. So that's a good demonstration of the Esri to Business Objects bridge. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out of here, and I'm going to go back over to my national view. So we'll turn off the Winston-Salem hydrants, and we'll turn off our customers. And then we'll back way out. Okay, now we're back at the U.S. view, and I'll zoom in a bit. I'm going to turn on my offices. So this is our initial view. So what I want to do is I want to go out and run a report. So I'm working in a Webby report, and I want to be able to identify points in that report on the map. So I'm going to minimize this browser window, and I'm going to click on my shortcut here. And this is going to ask me to log into my business object system. And so you'll recognize the standard XI 3.1 environment. So we'll log in here, and then I'll navigate over to the folder that contains my report. So when the folder listing displays, there's in our public folders here, we'll jump into DOT. And I'm just going to run DOT offices here. So I'm just going to right-click it and pick View. And this, for our business object users, should be very familiar. So what I've done here is I've gotten a listing of all our police stations, fire departments, in the state of Georgia, public works offices. So what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to see this one on the map, I want to see this one, and I want to see that one. Now, let me take a second to point out some items here. This report is built just like a standard Webby report. There's a couple of differences that you may or may not have seen before. Here we've got a button bar up top. The button bar is just a standard series of HTML buttons that allows you to interact with your report. So you can click check all and it'll check all these buttons. You can click uncheck all and it'll uncheck everything. But then here in the table itself, you've got a specially formulated checkbox that's built using standard HTML inside of your universe. And you drop it into your report along with the button bar, and you just tell Webby Report in your properties that you want to show this as HTML. And then whenever you view this in the HTML viewer in Business Objects, it renders these as true HTML that you can interact with. So when I click Map Properties here, so I've selected 3 points on the map. Now this is going to go back over the APOS bridge, back into our Esri system, and it's going to show me in the state of Georgia the 3 points that I've selected. So you can see that I've picked 1061, 1065, and 1073. 1061, 1065, and 1073. Now you can zoom in and mouse over each of these, and you see there's a little bit of call-out text there. That call-out text is fed in from the business object system, and you can feed in whatever data you want to display in that little pop-up window. So if it's address information, so if you're trying to show a listing of, say, licensing offices, you can give a listing of licenses there based on a selection in a business object report. So obviously we still have the full capabilities of zooming in, zooming out, so we have all of our mapping capabilities that we had before. So we could then go back over to the report, and we could pick more objects, pick map properties, and it's going to pass all of those points over to the state of Georgia. So now we've added a few more there. Okay? So that shows the direction from business objects into ESRI. And there's we can have this type of demo up and running in probably an hour, depending on the intensity of the data and the type of maps that you need to see. Okay, so let me log out of my business objects environment here. And so the next part here is I've got a dashboard. So the third portion of the Esri integration kit is the ability to build business objects dashboard designer dashboards inside of InfoView that includes the standard offerings of Webby and Excelsius, for instance. But now you can also add the Esri maps inside of a dashboard. So here I've just told it via an open document call in the business object I want to see a dashboard. So it's still holding my security, so it's asking me to log in. So I'm going to log in here, and it's going to go in and just immediately pull up that dashboard. And what you'll see here is a 3-pane dashboard. And this can show you sales by state, which is showing you here. You can also modify this to show consumer calls or public calls to a specific call center, or customer complaints about potholes in their neighborhoods, or whatever use cases make sense to the solution that you're designing. So here we have the ability to pick a state on the map, or on the dashboard. On the map we can zoom in on that specific state, and then here we can show a Webby report based on that selection. So our map here is still fully functional. We can zoom in on it, and we can mouse over each individual polygon. So here we're showing the different populations in the different counties in 2007. And this is publicly accessible data that we've added to the map. So then we can go back over here, pick Tennessee, and the map will jump us back over to Tennessee. We have the same mapping functionality here with our Tennessee report. So these maps are infinitely configurable. So you can use a map as a target, which we've done here. You can also use a map as a source, so you can select individual counties and have that affect your Webby report and your Excelsius dashboard. So the communication here between Esri and business objects is not just one way, even in dashboards. You can go 2 ways here too. Okay. The last thing I wanted to show you, as far as the integration kit's concerned, is the Crystal report. So with the integration kit and Crystal report, we have the ability to embed maps directly inside of a Crystal report. So what we've got here is I'm going to show you a report that I've created that's showing locations in a chart or in a table, and then now we've got a map here at the bottom. The map is still the same APOS UI that we saw in the other interfaces, but on the map here we've told it to display each of the points up top here on the map. So now if we zoom in here, we can zoom in on the various areas. So like if I zoom in on the Chicago area, let's go the other way, there we go. And then I can mouse over these points, and again, I've got my bit of call-out text there. So a couple things to note here. If you were to refresh this document and only show data in Massachusetts, the map would then refresh with the points that you're passing in from Massachusetts. So you're not stuck with just a single view of the map. You can then rerun your map, change your prompt values, and then have your map change accordingly with what's showing in that table. Part of the magic also about this Crystal report is that we can then save this report as a PDF. PDF is just standard PDF. There's nothing special here. We can save this to a desktop, or to my desktop here. I'll pick my desktop and just save it. And I'm just going to open it. And this is going to open inside of Adobe Reader. And so you've got your standard report up top here. But now you still have a fully functional map inside of your PDF. So all of the data has been included in this report and can be sent out to whoever requires this map. So you see, I'm just in a PDF document here. I haven't done anything special with it. But now we can go in and zoom in on this data and still get the same data that we can get inside of our business object system inside of Crystal reports. Okay? All right. I think we have a question.
Sure do. How is this set up in Crystal Reports?
Okay. So inside of Crystal Reports, whenever you open up Crystal, you can embed a Swift file type, which is just a standard Flash file type. And that's what this map is just a standard Flash object. And this Flash object you just put on your page, and then you create a series of variables inside of Crystal Reports that you pass in as Flash variables into this object. And those objects include your key for authentication for the APOS tool, the base map that you want to use, what the data that you're passing in. So whenever you've got your objects that you create in Crystal Reports, you pass those object values, say the XY values for your latitudes and longitudes, into the Swift object. And so it's just a matter of configuration directly inside of Crystal. So, and in order to get this to export to PDF, there's nothing you have to do, because this takes the settings that you've created in Crystal, and it's exporting that to a PDF type and just creating that PDF for you on your desktop. So to get it to export to Adobe Acrobat like we've done here, there's nothing special that you have to do in that case. All the configuration happens in the Crystal Reports application.
I have one more question. How long is a typical engagement to stand up DOE and Esri?
That's an interesting question. It depends on the size of the engagement. If it's a single instance of business object or a single instance of Esri, we could potentially have that done within a week or two. And again, that depends on the complexity of the systems and the requirements for the individual instances. So yeah, I would say 5 to 10 days is a good estimate for standing these up.
Any tips, traps, tricks?
Yeah, I like the fact that traps is in capital letters there. Well, with the APOS integration kit, the way that whenever it came out in first release, the biggest problem that I had in implementing this with my clients is the fact that it requires some development knowledge. And usually it's just knowledge of XML or knowledge of maybe .NET or some HTML. So that's the biggest thing to consider. Now, APOS is on the verge of releasing their fully integrated Flex integration kit. It's all driven by an application on the desktop. So there's no coding. It creates all of these files for you. All you may have to do is copy a file from one directory to the next. So that's the biggest issue that I've seen with these implementations so far. There are tons of tips. It just depends on your implementation. Like for the hurricane tracking system that I built, there's really no direct way to automatically pull in shape files from an external host at the current time. But there's a tool from a company in South Carolina that automatically pulls that data now, and it pulls it and drops it into a directory, and then we built a Windows service to pull those shapes and automatically add them in using the software development kit from Esri. And then that said, everything else, all the points in the map, were then able to be passed over to the business object system using APOS. So as far as tricks are concerned, I got tons of tricks. Again, it depends on the implementation. If you're implementing just in, like if you wanted to use the Esri.NET ADF, there's some flash tricks that you can employ to embed Excelsius documents directly onto your map. And I've got an example of that I can show that tends to show pretty well. Let me go into, actually, I'll do that in just a moment. But yeah, there's tons of tips and tricks that we have for the implementation, just depending on the implementation itself. So this is another demo that we created, and I'll pop this one up. This was built using .NET, and with Esri, they have several software development kits that you can use to build user interfaces. The most popular ones have been .NET and Java. Now that's moving more towards Silverlight and Flex, And of course, the iOS, the building applications for iPhones and iPads, and then JavaScript is also consumable on iDevices. But this interface in particular was built using .NET. So we can zoom in here on the map into the Minneapolis area, which is where we did the study on stores comparing stores between Walmart and Target. And obviously Target is based in Minneapolis. So you can see with the different icons here, we have Target stores and Walmart stores with the lighter colors. But we have the ability to look at some floating text on top of the map. So this is a standard Excelsius dashboard that we built inside of in Excelsius, and then exported it as a flash type, just like I talked about with the Crystal Report, embedding the map in the Crystal Report. And then we can pass the data points in as flash variables. So we can tab through this. So we've got our standard general data here for this target location. And then we've got rolling 12 months worth of rolling sales data for this one location. We can do the standard Excelsius analysis here, so we can look at different data based on the month and then slide a slider around to play with that data. And then we had room for another tab, so I put in a photo of that store in particular. So we can go back out to the map and then highlight another Target store, open that up, and you'll notice this is now St. Paul. It's a completely different store with its own data. It has its own sales data. We can still do analysis on that particular store in this Excelsius dashboard and see a picture of that location. Okay? So, and then we also, this is the initial integration kit from Esri, or from APOS. So we can also select the target stores layer, draw a box around these target stores, have it as, then the APOS kit analyzes the points that are contained within that shape, and then it presents us with a link here. So the link allows us to run a Webby report that shows summary information on the so we've selected 4 stores here. We can show summary information on the 4 stores that we've selected. So I've just clicked that link, and it's going to pop up a window here that's going to go into our business object system. It's going to pass those 4 store IDs into business objects, and it's going to run a report showing those 4 stores. So we have 4 stores in St. Paul, different zip codes here, and then we have our sales volume and the number of employees. Now, this is publicly available data, so I'm not showing you anything proprietary here. This is all out in any business directory that you can access. So yeah, we have that ability using this version of the APOS integration kit in .NET. And there's tons of little hidden tips and tricks, like if I move this panel over, I'm floating our ID or our logo over the map here, so there's a little trick that I use to get that on there. And then there's a button here used to clear all the graphics, so that in one swoop, I can just remove all the logos on this map, or all the shapes on this map. Okay? So let me go back over to my initial view. And the one last thing, actually I've got one other thing I want to show you. We now have the ability to embed maps directly inside of Excelsius dashboards. Now, with standard Excelsius, we can log in, we can create a dashboard that has mapping capabilities using the standard maps in Excelsius, but we have very limited capabilities when it comes to Excelsius mapping. They just show maybe a country and a black and white outline, or you may have the entire world with all the continents outlined. We have very little states outlined, so I think we may have one state, I think California, maybe Texas. We don't have any other states. We don't have any county breakdowns. We don't have any zip code breakdowns. Now, we've got a plugin for Excelsius called the GMaps plugin from Synagon Solutions. And Synagon, you may have heard of the GMaps plugin recently because they've just gone live with version 3 of their plugin. So if I run this dashboard is going to show a map, and all it's doing is just launching a standard Excelsius dashboard. And the main component here is a Google map. So you can see we're zoomed in on the Atlanta area here. We have the standard Google functionality. We can look at the satellite view, hybrid view, terrain view, and of course we can go back to the map. and then we can zoom in, zoom out. I can also change my location here to jump up to Chicago. And this is just like going out to maps.google.com and typing in the name of the city or the location that you want to jump to. So we could put in an address here and jump straight to the address, or a county name and jump straight to the county. So we'll go down to, if I can spell, Orlando, Florida. So I've built out this study on a GPS system. So we've got the case where a company can embed pallets or has a GPS chip embedded inside of their trucks and their fleet. Now we want to be able to look at the points every time that chip called home. So it's just a cellular chip that calls home. Every time it calls home, it returns its geographic location and latitude and longitude, and then it also returns some information. So the idea that I had here with this study was that we've got a transportation truck that's transporting food items. Now the food items have to be kept below freezing in order to maintain their freshness from the beginning to the end. But we're subcontracting with a company that is trying to save money. This company drives a couple miles down the road, they flip off their refrigeration systems, and then before they get to their destination, they flip them back on. Well, that's all fine and good because when you arrive at the location, you have a nice cold product, but your product may be bad because it's thawed out and gone bad and it's been frozen again. So now we have the ability to trace inside of Excelsius each point along the progression of a GPS chip or a truck and a fleet. So we can go to any point, like in midway here in the trip, and we can pick this point. And now this is 0.5 at 8:15 a.m. There's the temperature. So 28.5 degrees, so you know that your product at that point in time was nice and cold. What's also happened whenever I selected this point was this is a standard spreadsheet in Excelsius. So now we've been able to take the point in this map and pass this back into Excelsius so that we can then take advantage of pie charts, line charts, bar charts, dynamic visibility, whatever we deem appropriate for a dashboard, and bring this geographic data back into our dashboard. We can also use thematic highlighting in the dashboard so that we could highlight all of the counties in any state and then roll over those counties, pull out some information about it, click on it, zoom in on it, and then we can do a what-if analysis on that location. So this has become a very useful product. This also introduces a lower-cost alternative to an organization that may not have an Esri system stood up or a GIS system in place, because this data is just latitude and longitude or addresses as you would normally type them into Google. Now the beauty about the plugin is that it can interface with any standard GIS system like Esri or Intergraph or any system that can feed out data in the ODS open standard. We can consume that in this, and then this becomes a foot in the door to organizations that are looking to get into GIS but may not have the budget for it at the present time, because the assets that you build with this plugin are not lost when you stand up your full system. You can still use this type of system. Okay. So I've got a couple more slides here. Let me close this and go back over to my slides. All right. So this is the use case. I've got a couple of use cases here I'll talk about. This is the use case where we've got a hurricane that's coming on shore. In this case, this is Hurricane Katrina. We did a very extensive, this was about a 6 to 8 month engagement with an insurance company to build this hurricane tracking system. And so we've got customer points that exist all across the U.S. But what we're interested in is locations for these customers, how they're being affected by the current notifications of a storm from NOAA, and who's at the highest risk. So now you can look at the data here that's fed out from NOAA. You can see along the shoreline here whether we have a hurricane watch or a hurricane warning. And then we've also got the projected wind swaths here. So obviously the red is going to be the currently projected strongest wind swath. And then we've got our weaker winds and our even weaker winds. We can dissect this series of shape files to determine, okay, in the 74 mile an hour and greater wind swath, who is in that location? Or how many zip codes do we have in that location? What counties are involved in that location? That way we can allocate resources to get in on those areas, or wait until the storm comes through and then be ready at the very earliest moment to get in there and serve those people that are in need. So this, and then this type of system, if you look behind the storm here, we also have full tracking behind the storm of real data. So we know where the strongest winds hit, we know where the weaker winds went out from that, and then we know our customer locations, or our zip codes, or counties, so we know what areas have been affected and where we need to get aid if aid's not already there. So, and this system in particular updates as soon as NOAA feeds out their data. And of course, it goes on to say that you can extend this out to pretty much any natural disaster. So if you can plot out the path of a tornado, you can say, show me a path that's a quarter mile wide, that's basically your eat path of the hurricane, or of the tornado, and then you can say who's inside of that tornado path, or who's affected by that. You can create reports on that to determine who's in need of help. So we also did a case study with a specific Department of Transportation where we were talking about insufficient bridges, and this is where we selected the county on the map to run the map on the insufficient bridges. Now, I talked about this a bit earlier. This is just a blow-up of that same screenshot that we had. So you can select predefined shapes. In this case, this is the county shape, and you can run a report on these bridges, these specific bridges, and figure out which ones, as of the latest inspection, have been deemed safe, which ones are unsafe, which ones are critical. So we have that capability. You can also extend that to road routes, as I previously mentioned. So we've also got the last use case that I have here. With natural gas pipelines, this is an interesting idea. If you've got a series of pipelines, we can, if you've got a complaint that comes in saying, hey, I'm smelling gas, you can go out and draw a circle around the complaint point and find out if there's been any reported problems in that area, if there have been, what pipelines run through that area, if there are any meters, or if there are other individuals, other families that should be notified of any problems. This is another instance where the integration kit can work to help you select geographically points on the map that can then be translated over into business objects reports. So that's it. That's everything that I have with the demo and the use cases that we've worked with so far. I appreciate your time and attention, and I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I'm going to open up the lines here.
All attendees have been unmuted. You will now rejoin the meeting.
And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask your question, or you can also send it in via chat. Anybody have any questions? No? I know we've answered some throughout the presentation. If you have one.
We've got one question. We had a question about what version of business objects we were running on. And we are running, here in-house, we're running business objects XI 3.1. But we also, with this integration between Esri and business objects, we have the ability to run XIR2 and XI 3.0 and XI 3.1 up to the latest service pack. On the Esri side, we can run Esri version 9.3, 9.3.1, and version 10. All of the, from 9.3 up to the latest version are all supported.
Okay, great. Anybody else have a question? Last chance.
I know we're up on the hour here.
Yep.
So.
Okay, well, listen, if we didn't answer your questions, if there's something specifically about the presentation or demonstration, please don't hesitate to contact Chris, and if you want to take a deeper dive into the product's technologies, you can contact Greg Taylor. Both of their information is listed up on the screen right now, so please do not hesitate to give them a call. I also want to invite you to view DecisionFirst online, where you can learn more about what we do, and also additional webinar topics that we'll be having in the next couple of months. We'd love for you to join another event. Thanks so much for participating in your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.